Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good morning. So we're going to talk a little bit about the holiday that begins tonight, Shmini Atzeret, the eighth day of Sukkot. It's really a unique holiday, but it's a continuation, but it's new. So it's sort of an in between. It's a distinct holiday, but it comes after the 7 days of Sukkot. And outside of Israel, we add a day. So it's not just Saturday night, it's not just Friday night and Shabbat, but it's also Saturday night and Sunday, and that is called Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah. And it became the custom. It wasn't always this way, but it became the custom that the cycle of the study of the Torah, the annual study of the Torah, concludes on Simchat Torah, and which literally means the joy of the Torah. And we make a big celebration, and we make a big celebration, and we dance with the Torah, because that's the time when we conclude. That's the time when we conclude the cycle. So that's just a little bit about the holiday and the practices, the dancing, the hakafot. Literally, hakafot means circles. So what we want to talk about a little bit is why today we take it for granted. We finish the Torah on Simchat Torah. We finish the Torah on the holiday, which is called the joy of the Torah. But in reality, it wasn't always this way. And the fact that we call the holiday Simchat Torah is just relatively recent. It's just a few hundred years old. And so we have to say, why did they choose? Why has it become the custom that we celebrate the conclusion of the Torah on Simchat Torah? Because it's not such a natural time. You would think maybe when the year is over, at the end of the year, the last Shabbat of the year should be Simchat Torah. When's the last Shabbat of the year? The last Shabbat of the year is the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. So it's a little bit strange that we're 3 weeks into the new year, and then we conclude the cycle of studying of the Torah. So that's one issue we want to address: is why did they choose of all the dates of the calendar, of all the holidays? Why was it established that we conclude the annual cycle of studying of the Torah specifically on this holiday? And of course, by doing so, we learn a little bit more about the holiday. And then we also want to talk about the concept, and this is a little poetic, but it's nice. The concept of the dance, the way it has become the custom to celebrate the Torah, all kinds of ways of celebration. Usually, when we want to celebrate, what do the Jews do when they want to celebrate? They eat, right? That's what almost all Jewish holidays have in common. They tried to kill us, so we were saved. So let's eat. That's how we celebrate. And yet, when it comes to Simchat Torah, the celebration is expressed through dancing. So we want to talk about what's the Kabbalah of the dance. If we need a title for the class, it would be, what is the Kabbalah of the dance? So we'll talk about that for a moment, and that will tie in to the general theme of this holiday in general. Okay, so let's start with the dance. Let's talk about dance for a moment and what the Hebrew etymology of the word dance is, and that will give us a little bit of information about the concept of a dance and why Simchat Torah do we celebrate the Torah through dancing. You know, we could celebrate through eating, we could celebrate through saying l'chaim, we could celebrate through studying Torah. No, that's not what we do. Instead, we dance. So let's talk about dancing for a little bit, for a moment. So the Hebrew word, or the biblical word, or one of the biblical words for dancing, is machol. So machol comes from the word circle, and I guess people will dance in a circle, but more broadly, machol means to dance. So that's a machol. So we're going to think about the word machol for a minute, and then we're going to say another point, that machol, which is dance in a circle, is the same word, its etymology connected to the same letters as mechila, as forgiveness. So that root, in Hebrew, every word has 2 or 3 letters, usually 3 letters that are the root of the word. And the root of the word from machol, dance, or circle, dancing in a circle, mem chet lamed, is the same exact root for forgiveness. Now, this sounds strange. What does forgiveness have anything to do with dancing in a circle? But in Hebrew, obviously, language conveys meaning, and the Hebrew language is called the Holy Tongue because there's tremendous amount of significance in every aspect of the Hebrew language. And this is case in point. A dance and forgiveness. What's the connection between dance and forgiveness? So because we have a few poets on the line, if anybody wants to make a suggestion, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll continue with the discourse.
When you point your attention to some spiritual pursuits, then you don't have time to experience that much pain. And dance is one of the spiritual pursuits where the whole body is involved. So the whole person is engaged in doing something that's so joyful that there is no even shadow of pain or anything like that, which is associated with forgiveness. And that can override even the forgiveness for things that were not asked for forgiveness for.
Beautiful.
That's my take.
Very good.
Rabbi, in line with that, it's just a kind of a relief or anticipated relief at the idea that we are forgiven. We're going to just be joyous, and it's the body's expression of that.
Okay. So this is all good. We're going to take it a step further, but this is all good. So, Vicky is saying that part of forgiveness is you have to let go, and you can't focus on the pain, and you can't focus on the tension and the cause of pain, which is really sin, which is really separation, which is pain. And when you dance, you're basically letting go of the things that have been holding you back or holding you down or making you sad. And that's a critical part of forgiveness, to be able to let go and move forward. So that's Vicky's idea. Jill says that when a person dances or a person's happy, that represents the forgiveness. That represents the forgiveness. And because in a way, what's happening is that I'm rejoicing, I'm celebrating the fact that I've been forgiven. Okay, so that's all good. I'm just gonna take it a step further, a little bit further, because what Jill is saying is nothing to, okay, I guess there's dancing, but the key here is, and I alluded to before, the Hebrew word that we're referring to is machol. Machol is a circle. And so we're specifically going to think about dancing in a circle. And what happens when you dance in a circle is that you start at a given point, and then you move far away from that point, depending on how big the circle is. But the purpose of going further away is not because you're trying to escape the place you're in. That's not what it is about. It's about that you want to return back to your original place, right? You ever saw people dancing in a circle? It's not dancing in a circle. If you landed from Mars and you had no idea what dancing is, you would say, these people are very strange. They're just dancing in circles. Where are they going? They're not going anywhere. They're not moving. They're not advancing. So it's a strange concept. So what's machol? What's a circle? You're moving far away and you're coming back. That is the nature of a circle. Now, what is the concept of forgiveness? Now, forgiveness, when I say forgiveness, I don't just mean forgiveness for sin. I robbed a bank, now I have to forgive. In the Kabbalah, the concept of teshuvah, the concept of repentance is much broader. When I say I'm returning, means I am distant. And then I come back to who I am. Now I can think about it within the person. I come back to my true essence, or I can think about it with my relationship to God or to somebody else. I'm coming back close. So what is the cycle of a circle? Cycle of a circle is I'm moving distant, and in order that I should be able to come close. So if you're moving far away in order to become close, so just stay where you are, right? What's the point of going around and around? So Kabbalistically, what this represents is that when you come close after you were distant, you actually have a deeper love and a deeper intensity, a deeper closeness than had you never moved away. Because when you move away, that represents the distance. That distance creates tension. That tension creates longing, and the longing fuels the love. And this is what we say all over the place. We talk about it before the high holidays, that the Talmud says that a person who does teshuvah, person who returns, now return again, doesn't mean I sinned. It means that I am distant. I am distant from my true essence. I feel like I strayed from either my relationship with God or from what I know I want to be for myself. And now I'm distant. And that distance brings about a certain bitterness and sadness. The purpose is not to be bitter. The purpose is not to be sad. The purpose is that longing becomes fuel to bring me closer once again back to who I am, or to God, or closer to another person, to a spouse, or to a child, whatever it may be. But now when I come back, I'm coming back with much more intensity because I now appreciate the relationship much more than I did when I was just in my original space.
I pulled up about 15 minutes ago, and then he finally pulls up to tell me that Sugar's
I'm sorry.
down. I, said,
I think we're
down?
one second. Participants. That's okay, wonderful. So that is an interesting concept, and what we're going to say is that that's really the connection between forgiveness and dance. What is a circle? A circle, in the short, is you're going far in order to become close. What is forgiveness? That we recognize, and Hashem recognizes, that the distance that we experience throughout the year, this purpose is not the distance. The purpose now, the question is, how do we get the straying away, the moving away from who I really am, from the person I want to be? How do I make that not linear, not moving away from God, but how do I return that into a circle? That going away will actually fuel the coming back. And then what happens? Because I'm coming back now, I experienced the distance, I experienced the pain of distance, and now I'm coming back. So now my love to God is much more intense. The love to holiness is much more intense. And therefore the joy that is produced is much more intense. Because had I not gone anywhere, then I don't appreciate what I have, and I don't experience it as joy. When I'm distant, and then I overcome the distance, I come back, that's the true joy, and that's when the joy sort of takes me over. And this is, of course, the difference between people who are in love, and it's still an innocent love. An innocent love is very sweet and very pure, but you don't know what's going to happen once that love faces a challenge. And then inevitably, right? Inevitably, there's going to be a challenge. Inevitably, the honeymoon is going to end. It may take a day, it may take a week, it may take 80 years, it doesn't matter. Eventually, there's going to be because we're human, there's going to be tension, there's going to be distance. And now the question is, what is happening here? What's happening in my life? Am I moving away? Am I moving away, or am I dancing in a circle? And the beauty of a circle is that you have to move away to come close. You cannot maintain the same level of, if you were always pure and always holy and always feel close to God, then it's wonderful. You would be like a righteous person, but you're missing the joy of the dance. And the joy of the dance is that the distance brings you closer. And if you're not dancing, you're wonderful. You're sitting on your chair, but you're not dancing. And a critical component of the dancing is the distance, moving away. And the moving away is not for the sake of moving away, but it's for the sake of coming back. And
Rabbi,
that's why, yes.
Is there other word for dance? Because this year for us is kind of going to be harder to dance in a circle.
Now we have to dance in a circle, not literally, but figuratively. In other words, dance, this is the big Kabbalistic idea. The circle, dancing in a circle, understands that the fact that occasionally there's a distance and there's a tension, and it's going to happen. If you're a human being, there's going to be tension and distance between you and yourself, you and your true self, between you and your people you love, between you and God. There's going to be a cycle of distance. But to understand that the purpose of the distance is not the distance. The purpose of the distance is to complete the circle. And when you complete the circle and you keep going in that circle, that would bring you more intense joy than had you not experienced any distance at all, had you not experienced any tension at all, right? If there's a relationship and there was never any tension because we somehow managed to avoid the tension, right? The famous joke is that the person was married for 50 years. They asked the couple, what was the secret of your relationship? So they say, it's very simple. All you have to do is you have to go out twice a week. She goes out on Mondays and I go out on Wednesdays, right? So if you have a relationship where you magically are able to shield yourself from any tension, so it's nice, but it's not going to be the dance. It's not going to be the circle. It's not going to lead you to the deeper connection. And the deeper connection is specifically using that tension of distance and using that to intensify the experience. And that's what a dance is, and that's what forgiveness is. And why did God create a world where we're constantly going back and forth, right? It's almost like we feel foolish. Every year we go back to Shul on Yom Kippur, we say, God, we're going to improve ourselves. We're going to live up to the person we want to be. And then we come back 12 months later and we see, oops, maybe we have not lived up to exactly the person we want to be. So you know what? We'll repeat the cycle. So why are we repeating the same thing again? You know, like Einstein says, that it's foolish to repeat the same thing and expect a different result. Yeah, but that's if you're talking about in the practical sense. But in the spiritual sense, it's not foolish at all. That's what happens when you dance. What happens when you dance? You're going round and round and round. Why are you going round and round and round? What is this, a merry-go-round? No, but you understand that the movement produces the joy. And that cycle of distance and return intensifies the return. And that is what's happening here. And that's why the concept of forgiveness represents that the circle has become complete. You moved far away, but the distance was not for the sake of becoming far away. Rather, the distance was for the sake of coming back. Okay, so that's dancing, and that's completing the circle. Now let's think about it in the context of the entire month, because we're here at the conclusion of the 7th month. We're not finished the 7th month, but we're finished the holidays. We're finishing the holidays of the 7th month, which is the beginning of the year, because again, we count months and we count years differently. But in any case, we're what the Torah refers to the 7th month. We are the month of Tishrei. We just had the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Simchat Torah. Shmini Atzeret, really, the biblical name. So now if you want to look at this month, forget about the year. We can look at this month as a circle. What's the circle? What is the circle of the dance of this month? So in the beginning of the month is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What happens on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? We experience our distance. Say, what? Your distance? What's the one day everyone comes to shul? Of course, we're close to God. But what do we focus on? We focus on the tension. We focus on the fact that we are not, we did not live up to the person we want to be. In other words, we focus on the fact that we strayed. We went away. I don't mean strayed, we did something terrible, but I moved away from my true core. I moved away from the person I know I could be. And that's what I'm focusing on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I want to correct that. I want to realign. I want to refocus. I want to refocus my attention and my energy that this new year should be more in line with the person I am. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what am I doing? I'm coming to shul and I'm saying, God, in some sense, what I'm saying is, God, I am distant. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It means I'm a person. It means I'm a human being. But I'm saying, God, I am distant. And I can look at that and say, wow, so depressing. But that's only if I zero in on those few minutes. What happens if I stick around and I stay and I celebrate Sukkot? What's Sukkot? Sukkot is the circle is complete. And now God embraces me. Because we mentioned this before. We mentioned not today, but we mentioned this in the past. That the walls of the sukkah represent the embrace of God. And that's why if you look at the dimensions of the sukkah, the minimum dimension of the sukkah is that the sukkah has to have 2 walls and another bit, 2.5 walls, so to speak. And the Kabbalah says, the Arizal says, that the 2.5 walls represent the embrace of God. Because if you look at your own arm, you have really 2.5 parts. You have from your shoulder to your elbow, from your elbow to your wrist. That's like the 2 walls. And then your wrist to your fingers is the 2.5. And the sukkah is God's embracing us. So what's happening? What's happening is the cycle, we have a circle. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we focus on our distance. We say we understand that we're not living our full potential. Our relationship with God is not as pure as it should be. Our relationship with other people is not, we're not as close to other people that we want as we would like to be. And that tension is sometimes painful. And therefore Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is, in some sense, it's not a sad day, but it's a serious day because we're really engaged in introspection and thinking about the distance. But again, You have to understand that what's happening here is the purpose of this distance is the circle. Then on Sukkot, when you realize that I've been distant and I'm coming close, I feel like God's embracing me. I feel like the relationship is now coming, so to speak, full circle, pun intended. Now that joy is much more intense. And now the joy can take me over, and now I can really dance. So that's how this plays out in the month of Tishrei, in the month of the high holidays. So that's one point. Now let's take this a step further. The step further is that and this is going back to our original question of why was the calendar set up? Why has the custom become that we actually celebrate the giving of the Torah? We celebrate the Torah and we complete the cycle on Simchat Torah. So why are we dancing on Simchat Torah? So you tell me because we finished the Torah. Well, why did we finish the Torah today? Because we started the Torah today. Why did we start the Torah today? You could have picked any other date to start and conclude the cycle. In fact, one theory is that perhaps it would be better to start the cycle and finish the cycle on Shavuot. Shavuot is the holiday when we receive the Torah. Shouldn't that be? You got the Torah, so start studying it. So Shavuot should be the holiday. Seemingly, Shavuot should be the holiday where we should start the Torah and therefore finish the Torah. And together with the cheese blintzes, we should conclude the Torah. Why are we waiting a few months later and starting and completing the cycle on Sukkot? On Simchat Torah, the end of Sukkot. So the Kabbalistic answer is as follows. The Kabbalistic answer is that we are actually celebrating the giving of the Torah, but not the giving of the Torah on Shavuot, which is the time that we got the tablets at Sinai, when God spoke to us at Sinai and told us the Ten Commandments, we commemorate that as a holiday. But if you know the story, that holiday that holiday wasn't the only time we got the Torah, because 40 days later, Moshe came down the mountain and wanted to give us the Torah, wanted to give us the tablets. But because the Jewish people built the golden calf, Moshe shatters the tablets. And then he goes back up to God to implore God to forgive the people. And eventually God forgives the people. And eventually God tells Moshe, you know what, we're going to do another try. Let me give you the second tablets. And what day did we get the second tablets? We got the second tablets on Yom Kippur. I think we mentioned it, which is why Yom Kippur is a day of forgiveness, because just like God forgave the people that year when they first left Egypt, and he gave them the second tablets, which represents that the forgiveness was complete. So every year that becomes the anniversary of forgiveness. Okay. But now we're saying we now are going to celebrate the Torah, but which Torah are we going to celebrate? Are we going to celebrate the state of mind we were before the sin, or are we going to celebrate the relationship after we have rehabilitated the relationship after the tension of the separation of sin? So we basically have two holidays. We could say, do we want to get into the state of mind of Shavuot? What Shavuot? We left Egypt, we're pure, God comes, and it's the marriage, and there's no tension. Okay, it's no tension, it's very sweet. Or we could say, you know what? Let's move ahead. What else happened? Oh, there was some betrayal. There was some distance. People felt distant from God. God felt distant from the people. And then what happened? And then we overcame that distance. And that distance actually, when we worked through it, it actually proves how deep our connection is. Because both God and the people were not happy with the separation. So what happens then? Then the God forgives, gives us a second chance, gives us a second set of tablets. Oh, now we completed a circle. That joy is much more intense. If we had the joy of Sukkot, if we had the joy on Shavuot when we first got the Torah, it would be nice, but the joy would not be as intense. The intensity of the joy is specifically when there was a circle, because a circle represents that you moved away, but you came back. And the moving away and coming back is actually, it's not a problem. It's not something that, unfortunately, we're going to move away. We're going to experience tension. That's a superficial way of looking at it. If you look at the Jewish holidays, almost the relationship has to experience distance before the relationship could come full circle and actually be a source of true and intense closeness and joy. So that's why the forgiveness is critical to the circle, and the circle is critical for the relationship. And that explains why we chose the holiday to start and finish the Torah, not before we got the Torah, not at the moment when we got it, when we're considered holy and pure, and we're very close, but we want to celebrate the fact that we made a circle. We were distant, and that distance, but it's not, don't make a mistake, it's not moving away, right? If I take a picture of a circle and you freeze it, and you say, why is this guy moving away from the original point? He's probably trying to get away. He's not trying to get away. He's trying to get away so he can come back. And when he comes back, he's coming back with much more intensity. And that is what we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, on Sukkot, and Simchat Torah. We're celebrating the fact that even when we're distant, we're still part of the circle. Okay, so this is very profound. Even when we're distant, we're part of the circle. Even when we move away, we are actually it's part of the process of intensifying our relationship, because the moving away is here to bring us back. And if you have that attitude and you realize this is both true for relationships with God and with other people and with yourself, because the nature of things are, I'm going to move away from my core. I'm going to move away from the person I should be and who I know deep down I really am. But then I say, so how do I react to that? I can react to that and say, I'm moving away from self and there's no way back. Or I could say, no, the step away is really a step part of the completing the circle. And when I complete the circle, the joy and the happiness and the closeness and the intensity is much more profound. So that's the idea of the circle and the dancing and the forgiveness all being part of the same word. So if anybody has any comments, we could discuss it. Otherwise, maybe we'll say another point, a related point, and then we'll finish a little bit early today because there's a lot to do. 7th day of Sukkot. We have to get ready for the holiday tonight and tomorrow, and Saturday night and Sunday. But in any case, that's point number one. And then there's another second point, which is a smaller point. But if anybody wants to comment, go ahead. Otherwise, l'chaim, and then we'll move on.
Rabbi, it's just so are we dating Simchat Torah from the giving of the Torah the final time? Is that is that what you're saying?
The giving of the Torah the final time was Yom Kippur.
Okay.
But Yom Kippur is the time that we got it. But Yom Kippur is still, forgiveness is still, it's still part of the intensity of the distance, because on Yom Kippur, we still feel that we were distant and God forgives us. So we're distant and we start the circle coming back. But then it takes time. Now we need the embrace. The Sukkot, the 7 days in the Sukkah is God's embrace. And according to the Kabbalah, 7 is the 7 days of the week, that we want the embrace of God. We want the feeling of closeness to encompass all the entire week, all 7 days, because that represents that it's a full embrace. It's not just full in space, I'm in my sukkah, but it also encompasses a complete unit of time. Unit, I mean a complete cycle of time, which is a full week. And then once we feel the embrace of God, which follows the forgiveness, again, it's all steps in the circle. The question is, where are you in the circle of the dance with God? So on Yom Kippur, as we get the second tablets, now we're heading back. Now we have to feel that embrace. The feeling the embrace is the 7 days. And once we feel the 7 days, now the circle is complete. And if the circle is complete, that's when the joy is most intense, when you completed the full circle. So the full circle is completed on Simchat Torah. So again, it's not the day we got the 7 tablets, but it's the celebration of the second tablets. It's a few days late because we need to complete the circle. But again, the real question is, why are we celebrating the second tablets? Why don't we celebrate the first tablets? Weren't we in a state of purity in the first tablets? Weren't we more sincere in the first tablets? Weren't we more righteous? Weren't we more innocent? Right? Imagine there's a couple that every year they have an anniversary, but they don't celebrate the anniversary of the marriage. They celebrate the anniversary of the first time they were able to reconnect after a tension between them, after pain between them. So you say, 1 second, why don't you celebrate your anniversary? Wasn't that more exciting? It was your wedding day. Everybody was dressed up so pretty, and there were flowers, and there was good food and good wine. But instead, so that's one perspective. That's the perspective, which is, what's the high point of our relationship? The high point of our relationship is when we're the most innocent, when we're the most pure, when we're the most in love. Okay, innocent love is what I'm saying. And that's a legitimate perspective. But what the Kabbalah is saying and what the practice of Judaism highlights is, that's not the greatest joy. because in some sense there's trepidation. We're both innocent. What's going to happen if we read when we hit the first block? What's going to happen then? So it's innocent, but innocent, it's almost like bliss. It's bliss, but it's almost like ignorance. We don't know if this relationship is going to survive. We don't know if we as a couple have what it takes to make this relationship persevere. So now what we're saying is that, now what we're saying is, but if we're going to go and we're going to celebrate, well, that's what we're doing. We're celebrating the circle. We're celebrating we went far and we came back. That relationship, says the Kabbalah, is not a wounded relationship. It's not a relationship that is somehow secondary or not as pure or not as intense to the first relationship, to the relationship which was innocent and pure. The Kabbalah says, no, the opposite is true. It could be much more intense. It has the potential to be much more intense. Why? Because the distance creates connection. Because the distance completes the circle. And this is true about many areas of life, the idea of running and returning. You have to go far to become close. And so this is a powerful idea, and it's beautiful how it fits in within the context of the entire high holiday season or high holiday month, is that complete circle. And we come back to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur as we sense our distance. And the more you sense your distance, you're not saying I'm a bad person. But I'm saying is, even if I had the best year, even if I tried to be the best I could be, I'm distant from my core. What's my core? My core is the infinity of God. So there's no limit to what I can become. There's no limit to what I can achieve. And no matter what I achieve this year, in comparison to the infinity of my soul, there's a distance, there's a gap, there's a tension. Now the question is, what do I do with this tension? Either this tension creates depression, and it says, wow, I'm not who I should be, and therefore I get pulled down. Or I understand that this tension fuels the circle. And then when I come back, and when I try to get in touch with my true core, all of a sudden now, that joy and that intensity is much more complete because I sense the distance. So the circle is true in the relationship between me and myself. It's true with my relationship with other people, and it's true with my relationship with Hashem. So that is the. Okay, I think we'll leave it here for today. I think that's one idea to internalize. The main thing is, and this is what both Vicky and Jill alluded to before, the main thing is that the intense joy has to not just be intellectual joy, it has to get you to dance. And dance means, what does dancing mean? Dancing means you have to lift your feet. And what does it mean you have to lift your feet? It means that the intensity of the joy touches every part of yourself. Not just your head, not just your heart, not just your hands. Sometimes you can clap, but you're not dancing. Dancing means that the joy takes you over completely. And it's a wholesome experience. So may we all experience a joy, an intense joy. And you're going to say, how could I feel joy this year? This year, there's all kinds of restrictions and you have to be distant. And we can't, maybe some of us can't even get together. So one way to think about it, maybe this is the circle. Maybe we're distant from other people or from the people we love or from the places we want to be. But then when this period of distance, we turn the corner of the circle and we come back, that joy will be even more intense. So think about it, that if we're in a state of distance, we're not in a state of distance, we're going off a cliff. We're not going off a cliff. What we are is we're part of a circle. And the circle is going to come full circle very soon and bring us to intense joy. May it be so speedily and very soon. In any case, everyone should have a beautiful holiday and a joyous holiday, and the joy of the holiday should spill over and continue for the entire year. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.